Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing okay. I just thought I would come on and talk about a few things. Welcome to the channel. If you're just having a look, then you'll find quite a bit of information. To put you in the picture, I had a feeling that the governing body weren't truthful, and about 3 months ago now I started an in-depth study, and the things I found out, well, I couldn't ignore it anymore, and I disassociated from the congregation middle of May, and constantly I've been studying since then. So what I wanted to talk about is the scripture that they use in Matthew 24:45, where they talk about them being the faithful and discreet slave. Now, from looking at the Insight books, page Insight Volume 1, page 806, and it's under the heading Falcon, but there's faithful and discreet slave information there. If you go there, you'll have a look, and it actually explains to you that the faithful and discreet slave that's mentioned at Matthew 24:45 is actually talking about Jesus. So putting that into the perspective of Matthew 24:45, let me just find that for you. It says, "Who really is the faithful and discreet slave, who his master appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? Happy is that slave if his master on coming finds him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will appoint him over all his belongings." Now that's Jesus talking to his disciples, because if you look at the scriptures before it and the scriptures after it, it's talking about Jesus speaking to his disciples. So he's saying to them, who really is the faithful and discreet slave, whom his master, that's Jesus, appointed over his domestics, which is the disciples and the apostles, to give them their food at the proper time. That's to give everyone else the food at the proper time. Happy is that slave. They're the faithful and discreet slave as well, because they've been anointed. So that scripture is saying, happy is that slave, as in happy is the anointed disciples and apostles, if his master on coming, that's Jesus, finds him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will appoint him, so that Jesus will appoint the apostles over all the belongings, as in everyone else on earth, when they get taken to heaven to rule with him. So that's what Matthew 24:45 is talking about. It also mentions it in Luke 12:42. It says, who really is the faithful steward, the discreet one, whom his master will appoint over his body of attendants to keep giving them their measure of food supplies at the proper time. And then it says, the master, Jesus, of that slave, as in the anointed, the apostles and disciples, will come on a day that he is not expecting him, and at an hour he does not know him. An hour that he does not know, and he will punish him with the greatest severity, and assign him apart with the unfaithful ones, if when Jesus comes that he finds that they're not preaching and teaching the word. So that's referring to Luke. Another one that they like to use to talk about a flock, or a different flock, is in John 10 verses 16, and it says, and I have other sheep which are not of this fold. Those two I must bring in, and they will listen to my voice, and they will become one flock, one shepherd. And then, this is why the Father loves me, because I surrender my life so that I may receive it again. No man takes it away from me, but I surrender it on my own initiative. I have authority to surrender it, and I have authority to receive it again. This commandment I received from my Father. So that's Jesus in John 10:16 at the start of that. That's Jesus talking to his apostles. And he's telling them that he has other sheep which are not of the fold. Obviously, they're not anointed. It's the disciples and apostles that are anointed. So the other sheep that he's talking about is everyone else. Everyone else who comes to believe in Jesus and Jehovah, and they're the other sheep. So that's what that scripture's talking about. So the faithful and discreet slave are both Jesus when he was talking on his own, and he was also referring to his apostles when they were anointed, because they will rule with him in heaven, and that's the 144,000. They've all died now. Even the Bible, you know, that once the last apostle died, there was a great apostasy set in. And that's because the 144,000 had already passed. So when the governing body tell us that they're the faithful and discreet slave, they're talking rot. They're not. And the 144,000 is already gone. That's why Brother Splain, who he says he's anointed, that's why he said that if anybody else says that they're anointed, they're obviously, ooh, that's because they would be, because there isn't any more anointed people on earth. They've all gone to heaven. So that's what that scripture's about. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about was the 607 date. Now, if you've looked at my previous videos, you'll see that I done a massive chart, and I did hundreds of hours of study. I charted dates, I charted events, I charted battles, I charted kings, I charted births, deaths, everything, because I started to look into prophecies as well. Now, the 70-year exile started in 617 BCE. That was when the first group of exiles were taken from Babylon. Taken to Babylon. It ended in 547. Now, if you take 617 and take 70 years off that, you get 547. It ended then because that was when the Battle of Sardes, Sardes, between the Lydian King Croesus and the Persian conqueror Cyrus the Great. Cyrus conquered his opponent and its capital. Now, so that's the 70-year exile when the first group of exiles were taken, the Judah exiles. And you can check that at Second Chronicles 36 verse 20. So that was the 70-year exile date. Now, the governing body claim that 607 was their destruction date. It wasn't. And you know, well, anybody that's probably looking at the moment knows that it wasn't 607. The destruction was in 587. The temple, now, I'll go back there. 607 was their date of the destruction. So it makes logical sense to take 70 years off 607, which you get 539. So if the destruction happened in 607, that would mean that it was rebuilt in 539 or 537, but it wasn't. The Judah exiles didn't go back to Jerusalem till 2 years later. So that would be 537. Wasn't built then either. So, as I say, to have a destruction date and use that as a 70-year date by taking 70 years off and getting 539 or 537, that would mean that it would have to have been built then, but it wasn't. So anyway, what I found, as you know, the destruction was in 587, 586. The temple was rebuilt in 516 BCE. That was the 6th year of King Darius the Persian, because there's a Darius the MEDE and there's a Darius the Persian. So there's also 2 Belshazzars as well. In fact, I'll go into all these things later that I found. So, because Darius the MEDE had already died in 539. So the temple was rebuilt in 516, which is the 6th year of King Darius the Persian. And you'll see that in Ezra 6 verses 15. So the actual destruction was in 587, which all the cuneiform records show, all archaeological evidence shows, and even taking their 607 and their flannel that they give you for getting that date, because they take that date and take 70 years off it to get the 539. But it wasn't rebuilt in 539, so that doesn't make sense at all. Because there was a desolation of 70 years, and there was also a destruction. Now the reason that I mention Second Chronicles being quite important is because in Second Chronicles 36 verses 20 it says, he carried off captive to Babylon those who escaped the sword, and they became servants to him and his sons until the kingdom of Persia began to reign. You will know that Darius the MEDE died in 539, so it wasn't Darius the Persian, because Darius the Persian became king in 522 following the death of Cambyses II. So that's the difference between Darius the MEDE and Darius the Persian. It was Darius the MEDE who reigned in 539. Okay, so hopefully that clears it up for you. There's also a demon prince of Persia as well, who is a demonic spirit who rules over Persia. So that's another prince of Persia that they use, but he's a demon spirit. So as I said to you, there's two Dariuses, Darius the MEDE, Darius the Persian. There's two Belshazzar the Chaldean and Belshazzar the Babylonian, and that's once you've got to work all through all these things. And if you watch my other videos, you'll see the workings out. So hopefully it makes sense. Okay. So keep watching my videos and I'll keep posting, because I'm finding out loads of stuff, and I think it's helped the fact that I did this huge chart. Now I've been studying the Bible constantly for 3 months. So keep watching and I'll speak to you again. Have a good day. Bye.